Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. I'm Kevin Bille, and as always, we appreciate you joining us here today. Well, hey, back-to-back A10 guests from the world of college hoops, but I might be a little more biased this one since he's in the state of Ohio. With us today, the head men's basketball coach at Xavier University, Travis Steele. Coach, what's going on?
Kevin, nothing, man. This season, practicing every single day. But I'm glad I got a great opportunity to be on here with you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. Well, hey, you've been there a couple of years as head coach. You've been there a while as an assistant. You know everything there is to know about this program, but allow us to know a little bit more. Like, what makes Xavier basketball so special?
I think it's all the former players, it's all the former coaches, our administration. I mean, you look at Xavier for a really long time. It's been kind of climbing that mountain for a long time, right? And you look back to when we were in the MCC a long time ago, which is now the Horizon League, dominated that league. Then we moved up to the A10, dominated that league. Then we moved up to the Big East. So I feel like Xavier's just kind of continually just been climbing that mountain over the years. But you look at all the great players that Xavier's had, from all over the country, whether it was Byron Larkin, whether it was David West, Tyrone Hill, Aaron Williams, Derek Brown. I mean, the names go on and on and on. The great coaches that have been here, right? Whether it was Skip Prosser, Pete Gillen, Bob Stack, Sean Miller, Thad Matta, Chris Mack. I mean, it's just it's incredible. And I'm just really, really fortunate to be a small part of Xavier basketball. But all the people that have helped build it are what makes this place such a special place. And just their connectivity, Kevin, like our former players' involvement is very, very, very high here at Xavier. They're very involved. They come to practices, they come to games. They know our players, they have relationships with our players. Just that family type atmosphere, man, is what makes this place special.
That's great. That's great. I love for you to kind of take me into the world of recruiting a little bit and kind of building this team. I mean, you and your staff, you've put together, on paper, one of the top 20 classes 3 years in a row. I know you had a really good history of that as a recruiter when you were the assistant. So, like, what's the secret sauce, Coach, to getting these players?
Man, I think the first thing is evaluation is so important, Kevin. Like, knowing what you're getting in recruiting, right? It's not about who you don't get. It's about who you get, right? And I think that's incredibly important. But making sure it's a great fit, for Xavier, for our staff, for our style of play. There's a lot of things that go into it, not just talent, right? I think a lot of people can pick out talent, but you got to dive in deeper and find out, what's their work ethic, what's their character. Do they care truly about winning? Is it more about themselves? And really finding guys that really fit this place. And then at the end of the day, recruiting it's relationships, right? I mean, whether that's with high school coaches, AAU coaches, junior college coaches, individuals, right? We sell Xavier, but it's more about developing the relationship, and that trust has to be there between us and that young man and his family.
Right.
And I think our staff, we've hired, people who can really communicate and talk and develop relationships. And I think that goes a long way as far as getting really good players.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on. Could you let me know maybe more as to, what are you looking for specifically? And obviously coaches that are listening, but even business owners right now that are struggling to find employees, how is what you're doing, hey, I'm looking for these things specifically. And how is that applicable to them when it comes to finding people for their teams or organizations?
Yeah, Kevin, I think hiring is the most important thing you can do as a CEO or in a managerial position that you can do. You got to have great people around you. Right. It's like hiring. When I got a chance to hire my staff, I wanted to make sure that I hired the right people, the right men. Right. I wanted to hire guys that are high character, going to do things the right way. That's non-negotiable. I wanted guys that are hungry. I didn't care how much experience they had, quite honestly, Kevin. Like when I hired our staff, like I wanted guys that were hungry, that were going to work, go the extra mile. Like so many of us, so many guys will say, hey, we work hard, we work hard, we work hard. Well, what are you doing to separate yourself amongst everybody else? Because if you're doing what everybody else is doing,
that's right,
then you're just going to get the same results. You're just going to be in the middle. How do we separate? And I want guys that are going to go that extra mile. Then I love people who can communicate, Kevin. I don't care if you're in business. I don't care if you're a doctor. I don't care if you're a coach. If you can't communicate, you can know everything in the entire world, right? You can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you can't communicate that to other people and speak a language that other people can understand, then it doesn't matter what you know. You got to be able to communicate it and deal with people, build relationships. I think that's so important. I don't care what industry you're in. I think that's incredibly important. Those are the three things that I kind of really stuck out to me when I hired. Now, when we add players, I think the question I always ask, my non-negotiables, if you don't live basketball, then you can't play for me and you can't play at Xavier. Right. And I'm not talking like it or love it. Like you have to literally live it because that's what it is here at Xavier. We don't have football. Right? This is a basketball school through and through. And I want people that want that. We don't have tailgating on Saturdays with 40,000. We don't have all that here. So this is a basketball school. So you got to live basketball and you got to live in the gym. You got to be a process-oriented guy. And then I want guys that understand that, hey, listen, I want guys that have won before, at the high school ranks, at the AAU ranks, because I think that winners win. There's a reason why, like they've either had to sacrifice and they understand that it's not all about how many shots you get, how many points you get, things like that. But shooting and IQ are obviously two of my non-negotiables, all like tangible things on the floor. Yeah. Like if you can't shoot, it's hard to play here. And if you don't know how to play, really hard to play here. If you're not tough, really hard to play here at Xavier. So those are my non-negotiables that are tangible on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's really good. And I think for people listening, at least the thing that comes through to me, Coach, is you've got a great deal of conviction with those things, and everything that you're doing is going back to those. And I think sometimes people can waver one way or the other, especially when it's not working, right? And so I think you've brought conviction to that. There's simplicity in what you're doing, and then you've provided clarity to your staff in terms of going out looking for players. Going back to your staff, I'd be curious to know what insight you could provide. Are you looking for, you talked about some of the things you're looking for in a staff. How much of those things are similar or not similar with your style or your personality? And what's the good and bad of that when you're building a staff or hiring people?
Yeah, I think, I had probably a unique path to get here. I wasn't a big time player. I was, I had to kind of fight my way and tooth and nail to kind of get to where I was. And I was very fortunate to get the opportunities that I had, but I want guys that have kind of taken the harder road. I think that's a good thing. But I think when you put together a staff, the strengths and weaknesses of that staff have to all fit, right? I don't want the same guy in each position. And that's from what they can bring to the table, their strengths and weaknesses, but also their personalities have to fit, which I think is very important. So I want guys that can, like I said, like some guys are a little bit more, hey, we maybe offensive minded, defensive minded, right. Work more with big guys, guards. Where are their recruiting areas more? Maybe they have more relationships kind of in the South versus the East versus the Midwest. All those things have to fit together because we have to be able to cover as much area in recruiting as we possibly can. But then when we're coaching our guys, we have to have everything covered. And I think when you're the CEO, you have to have an understanding of who you are, right? Who I am. Right. And listen, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and I want to make sure that I surround myself with guys that are going to help make up for areas that maybe I'm not as good at, and which I think I've done. Again, very fortunate to have Jonas Hayes, Dante Jackson, and Danny Peters as assistant coaches, and then we got a lot of help, Kevin, as well. Like all the administrative assistants, they don't go unseen, man. What those guys do is very, very important. Jordan Brooks and Chase Vaudrin and Mario Mercurio.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that in terms of leadership, Coach, I think the two things in awareness there are, you got to have that self-awareness, right? And then a situational awareness as to what's going around. And in just talking to you here, just a couple minutes and knowing a little bit about the program, you've already emphasized how important communication is. And, I always said, like, when I was a coach, like, I always wanted to know when you came to practice or you saw our team play, like, we're really good at talking and do we really work hard? And I know those might be things that, like, yeah, we just need to do, but like, we just try to place an emphasis on it every day. I'd be curious to know, just to dive a little bit deeper on the communication part, like, what is it that makes a good communicator? Like, what are you emphasizing to the guys? Is listening just as valuable as when you're talking? Where do all those things fit so that everybody understands where you are when it comes to communication?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to understand your audience, right? Are you, because we deal with all different types of people and ages, right? So you could be talking to a 16-year-old high school recruit, and then 10 minutes later, you may be talking to a 55-year-old CEO, maybe who's a booster of our program, right? So you have to understand your audience. I think that's first and foremost. And then I think secondly, Kevin, you said it, I think listening is the whole key, right, to communication. So many times people are thinking about what they want to say that they completely miss what they should hit on, right? And it's all about listening. It's about making people feel good about themselves, right? And hearing their problems, helping them, and that's what we're here to do, is to serve others, right? We're here to, serve our players. We're here to serve our former players. We're here to, how can we help? Right. That's what I always ask our staff. Like, it's not about what's in it for me, what's in it for me, what's in it for me. People that do that are seeing it the complete wrong way. And, have that servant leadership mentality, I think, is so important. But I think the listening is the key to it, though, Kevin. And whether it's recruiting or whether that's dealing with a booster or whether that's dealing with, an administrator on campus or whatever it is, but just treating people the right way, Kevin, like knowing people's names on campus. It drives me, like, we should know every employee in Centos Center by first name. Our players better know all of them as well, because those, our employees here said we do anything for our players. And I always tell our guys, this goes for our players as well. We may be, we're not the most important people on campus, but we are one of the most visible, some of the most visible people on campus. And with that comes a huge responsibility. Now, how can you lift up somebody's day, right? Because you never know what somebody's going through when you walk past them in the hallway, and they could be going through a lot of stuff. You just don't. A lot of people try to hide things, and you just never know what will turn their day into a really good day just by having what a conversation can do. So, but listening, I think, is the number one most important thing as far as communication goes.
That's good stuff, Coach. Yeah, I love it. I love what you're doing there. And you took the words right out of my mouth. That is such a mindset of a servant leader. So yeah, kudos to you. Hey, how about the program? Do you guys have certain standards or values that you're living by, each day? And if so, would you mind sharing them? If not, that's totally fine. But maybe walk us through the process of what that looks like to discover those. Because I think this is the one part missing sometimes in the business world, is that, hey, we know that these are our values, these are our standards, so we're living by these every day, not the scoreboard. I know that's what you're going to be hired and fired on, but if we could dig a little bit deeper to, this is the standard of Xavier basketball, and we're living by these values every day. Yeah.
Kevin, it's funny. Like, I worked with a marketing company here in Cincinnati at length. I would say it took about 4 or 5 months to kind of solidify the exact words that I wanted to use. Because I think any word that you have on the wall or you put in front of your team has to be exactly right. Right. And it has to mean something. So it took a while, right? It was a long process. It was a good process to go through, but it was a hard process. So I came up with 4 core values that we wanted to live by here at Xavier. The first one is carry your brother. And basically what that would mean is being a great teammate, both on and off the court, being there for each other through thick and thin, good and bad. investing in your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't be worried about yourself. It's all about just the investment. Just worry about your teammates and how can you help them. So that was number one. Number two is compete at every moment. We want to, I don't care whether we're playing a game of pig after practice or if we're playing Duke, if we're playing Walsh, it does not matter.
Right.
We compete. It's practice, it's lifting, it's academics. You can't turn on and off competition. Our program is centered around that. Our third core values embody undeniable confidence. And what that means is I want guys that don't ever become flustered, or, you shouldn't be able to tell whether we're up by 10 or down by 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a lot of times people don't understand, okay, well, what is confidence? Confidence is being the same guy every single day, regardless of how things are going for you, and being mentally tough. Better be really mentally tough to have that, undeniable confidence. And then you also have to earn your confidence, right? Like you earn your confidence through your work, so again, so embody undeniable confidence is the third one. And the fourth one, it kind of goes in line with we're a Jesuit university here at Xavier, but it's strive for magis. And what that basically means is striving for excellence, striving for more. And that's as a man, that's as a player, that's as everything, how we develop in the whole person. And we live by those things. What's funny, Kevin, like what I do, the first thing we do when we get our team here in the summer is we go through our one culture class a week, because I want those guys to understand exactly what we are. Mario Mercurio on our staff had developed a booklet that we go over with our players. We go over one core value each week. And then I let those guys kind of talk, and I want them to understand, hey, what are our guardrails around culture? So obviously having words is important on a wall, but then having a deeper understanding of what it is. And then how can we hold ourselves accountable, right, to living out these four core values? Because you have to live them out every single day. For example, like carry your brother. I'll let those guys kind of talk. Hey, how can we make sure that we're doing this? Well, one way could be, hey, if a teammate's on the floor, we're going to go sprint over and pick them up. If a guy passes you the ball, it's pointing to the passer, right? Dean Smith put that into play a long time ago. I'm just using those as a couple examples.
Yeah,
we don't have a million of them, but we do have guardrails within each of our core values that, quite honestly, we coach just as hard as we do our scheme, if that makes sense. Like our X's and O's, like this stuff, we live and die by it, right? Because if you have to fight for your culture every single day, and it's like a living being. It's constantly morphing and changing. It can morph bad or it can morph good to be a good thing. And so we want to make sure that we're living out our four core values every single day.
Yeah, I love it, man. Hey, sign me up. I think I can shoot a couple threes for you in the corner, maybe. But I love everything that you're talking about there in terms of the program, and I think that's another thing that makes you so special. How much, I want to dive a little bit into you as a head coach, but where that's at and others in your life, especially your brother, how much of what you do as a head coach now is because of the coaches you've been around, specifically, John Gross, your brother that's up here at Akron?
A lot, again, without John, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I know that. He opened up a lot of doors for me to get into business, a long time ago. But again, I think all of you take from every experience that you've had, right? And some experiences are better than others, but they're all learning experiences. And, whether it was my brother, I was his shadow in a lot of ways growing up, man. He was, in a lot of ways, he was my hero growing up, right? I looked up to him like he was the best coach in the country, right? Which I think he is one of the best coaches. But working under Thad Matta, Sean Miller, Chris Mack, Kelvin Sampson, I've worked for some incredible coaches.
For sure.
But I have to be my own person though, Kevin. I think that's an important distinction, because I think players see right through it. They want people to be authentic. They can smell that out very, very quickly. But you steal from each of those guys, right? Like there's certain things you're like, man, and I kind of kept a document over my years right? So you don't forget, because I have a tendency to forget things, Kevin.
Yep.
So what I did is I started a long time ago. I said, hey, listen, if I ever get my chance to run my own program under that motto, I love this, under Kelvin Sampson, I love these things. I'm going to try to find a way to weave in these things into my program when I get that opportunity. So, each guy was a tremendous coach. I learned a lot. Very grateful for the opportunities that every one of those guys that I've mentioned gave me in the past, because I wouldn't be here without those guys.
Yeah, I think what you said there is really important. I would encourage people that are in assistant roles out there in coaching or wherever that's at in the ladder of business to do what you did. I think that's so crucial, because that allowed you to be present with where you're at and take in, the things that were valuable, and you morph that all together. And so, that's great. And I'm sure, I maybe it was your parents, I think, but I've been in that Newcastle gym before, so when you grow up around all that, you're just, how do you not love hoops if you don't grow up around all that, right?
Man, you're not kidding. It's a religion in Indiana. It's a religion.
What's that? I'm sorry.
It's a religion in Indiana. That high school basketball is.
Yeah. Even when I walked in there, I was amazed. What do you think? You just mentioned authenticity, and I think you're spot on with this, but what are some other key components that you feel you need to display, as a leader? And then, what would be your expectations of those people, let's say underneath you? Of course, you're here and there via title, but how you have to get under there and serve them, of course. But what are some of those expectations of them? But knowing that, hey, I got to bring this every single day from where I'm at.
Yeah, I think the expectations of a leader, number one, is consistency, being the same person every single day. And I think that's really hard for people, right? I mean, listen, we all have things going on in our life. Maybe your girlfriend broke up with you. Maybe you got in a fight with your wife. Maybe, I don't know, your child's sick or whoever. I don't really know what's going on. Maybe you flunked a test. You didn't do well on a test. You have to be the same guy every single day, regardless of what's going on around you. Win, loss, draw, same guy. I think that's important. I also think the second thing is you have to be willing to have those hard conversations, right? And I really encourage our players to do that themselves, right? And because I'll have a guy come up and say, hey, coach, I'm really struggling with such and such. He won't pass the ball. I said, okay, well, have you dealt with it? Have you told him? No. Okay, well, why not? And they'll kind of look at me and why don't they want me to do it for them? No problem. I can do it, but it'll be a heck of a lot more powerful if that comes from the player, right? And understanding, listen, that having transparent conversations and learning how to communicate through tough conversations allows for so much growth, right? It's almost, I always say, I got a little 8-year-old, Winston, and at times I just want to protect him, right? I got an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, but I always tell my wife, listen, we have to let him kind of figure it out, right? And that's the only way he can grow. I can't do everything, or my wife can't do everything for him. And allow him to be able to grow. Allow him to bump his head a few times. Which he's gonna do several times. Yeah. But he'll be better because of it. But those hard conversations that you have to have every single day. I need our assistant coaches to do that. I need our administrator assistants to do that. Our GAs, our players. I want transparent, very direct conversations. Doesn't mean you have to be demeaning or anything like that. Just be very direct and transparent, and trying to get guys to understand how to communicate and be able to do that. I think so important.
Yeah, it's good. The consistency thing, I value what you're saying there, because man, when I was a young coach, I think about how much I struggle with that. If we lost 3 games in a row compared to if we won 3 games in a row, I was just bad. And the thing I don't think people realize sometimes is how that impacts, that audience that you're dealing with, right? Then they become so high and low. And I know that was definitely a struggle for me in leadership. What about you? What are some struggles maybe that you face, with leadership in general, in terms of the role that you're in?
I think just constantly understanding, again, you get pulled a million different directions at times, Kevin. I mean, like, it's like, which is hard because like when you're an assistant coach, your life is very, very, very simple, and then all of a sudden you get all this stuff on your plate that you can never, I always say this, my door is always open. I don't care what I'm doing. I don't care if how deep into a scout that I am or whatever. If one of our players or one of our staff members comes back in and needs to talk, boom, I'm stopping what I'm doing completely and I'm all in on that conversation. I think I had to learn that early, Kevin, when I became the head coach. It was like, man, because you feel like you have so many things to do, but the most important thing you have is the people when you're around that are in your program. And how can you serve them? How can you help them? That's more important than anything you could do scouting wise. That was an adjustment for me, right? And I had to kind of learn that. The other thing that I felt like that I may have struggled with early, Kevin, was that sometimes you have to coach your staff harder than you coach your players, and you have to be so clear and concise with what you want. Because I'd find that I'd get really frustrated, right? And I'd be like, well, I want the scout done this way, or I want this is not how I want it. But that was really on me. But I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, you know what? I didn't give clear enough directions to our staff, and it's creating frustration for me. And then it wears on the relationships where it doesn't have to be that way. I have to give them better direction and what I want. And I think that helps a lot of things as well. But I do think you have to coach your staff really hard. And that doesn't mean you again, some people will say, well, does that mean you're being mean to them or being hard? No, that's just being very clear and giving them direction, because I want them to coach. I want them to be leaders on our team as well. And I want our players to see them as coaches, which I think is extremely important.
I think the thing that's really interesting about that resonates with me is people just aren't willing to take the time, right? That's our most precious thing. You alluded to the first thing, like you'll stop everything when somebody comes in the office. And the good of that is you're building great relationships. You're there for them. You're present. The bad of that is you started one thing, you didn't finish it. You're bouncing around, right? But, making sure that you allocate that time. And I think the last thing, kudos to you, because I think some leaders need to step back a little bit and reflect that mirror on them. Like, it's no different to me as a parent, like our 14-year-old will do something and I'm mad. I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at myself because of, the environment that I've created, the expectation there. And I've said it on here before, but to me, the greatest leaders I've been around, some people that make it, or having this podcast, the clarity and the simplicity, those things are just amazing out of people, and something I wish, I'd have known a little bit more about before I stepped into that role. What about you? Like, what's one thing, you wish you would have known when you began your coaching career that maybe now, or maybe something that's been an adjustment or something different that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think, initially when you're getting in the business, you think you know everything.
Yeah.
Right. I thought I was ready to be a head coach at 19 years old, and man, I knew nothing.
Right.
And it's funny. It's you think it's like, X's and O's, and which again, listen, is important. I don't want to undervalue scheme and stuff, but man, that's such a small piece of the pie. I mean, it's about managing people, managing personalities. It's about, forming, fighting for your culture every single day. And honestly, scheme is probably one of the smaller parts of it. I mean,
for sure.
But that was the thing when I was 19-year-old, Kevin. That's what I was like all obsessed with, right? It's just constant, like, where's the game going? And listen, and and it's still important, but again, I would tell you, I think it's not as important as some of those other things. So I wish I would have probably have known that. Again, you don't really know it until you kind of go through it, though.
Yeah, right.
And I've been fortunate, like I said, to work for some incredible coaches that you kind of look at and it's like, wow, this guy's obviously a really good coach, but he's a great leader of people. And he knows how to manage people, and he knows how to kind of like get people to be the best versions of themselves. That's what a coach does. Ultimately, at the end of the day, how are we helping people? How are we helping them become the best version of themselves?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I was just telling somebody the other day that recognizing people and having an awareness to, like I'd be in front of the room and there was 12 guys staring at me. Well, 3 wanted it on the board and 3 wanted it on film and 3 wanted it over here on the, it's like, man,
Yep.
I think only 3 people were listening out of the 12 because of how I was hitting them, with all those different things. What, tying in with that, if you could go back to that 19-year-old Travis Steele, like, and any young coaches that are listening right now, what advice would you give them? Is it anything that we've already talked about, or is there anything else in addition that you would share with them if you could?
I would say just to be an absolute sponge, like read, listen to podcasts. How are you growing? Like, we ask our players to get better every single day, but what are we doing to better ourselves too? Right? We can't forget about that. I think that's that's really important. But just soak up, just enjoy the journey. I mean, listen, there's so many bumps in the road. There's a million different ways to do it, but enjoy it. I mean, I've been at Indiana. We were fired, right? I thought I was going to get out of college basketball at that point. And, and then I landed here at Xavier. Yep. And then, 13 years later, I'm the head coach at Xavier in a Big East school. I mean, so there's just a million different ways to do it, but enjoy it, put yourself around great people, and just serve others, man. Just be focused on, not like, we all have our own goals, right? We all do, which is great. But like, what the question you have to ask yourself every night, and I think when you go to bed, is like, did you help people around you get better that day? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, then you're not living a very fulfilling life. You're living a very hollow life. And like, what are you doing to help people around you? And I think if you have that mindset, your happiness will be great. But then your career will end up going where you want it to go.
It's good. Talk about we'll start to wrap up here and getting 3 pointers. Talk about though, failure. We've all experienced it, right? And it's our response to that. How has, you don't have to share specifics, obviously, but how has that shaped and molded you just as a person?
Yeah. We talked about having transparent conversations with people around you. You got to have transparent conversations with yourself.
Yep.
Which can be very painful at times, right? But that allows you to be able to grow and get better. And I think, we all want to think that we're the best at everything that we do, but we're not. It's how do you get better at those areas and being honest. Now, I want our players, have them do an anonymous one at the end of the year. Kevin, I want them to know what was the best thing that I did for that year? What was the worst thing? What would be something that I could change? And it's same thing with our staff, because I want to get real feedback, because I'll meet with our players. I'll meet with our staff. Sometimes people don't want to tell people bad news, right? They don't want to give them the hard message. So I think it's sometimes making it anonymous is a good thing. But you'd be amazed what you get back. You'd be amazed, even some of the stuff that's really good. So the things that they really liked, it was like, man, I didn't really think that was that big of a deal, but maybe it was for a couple people. And so I think just that self-evaluation tool is important. It is for growth and kind of, like I said, we got to continue to grow ourselves, and we can't ever lose sight of that.
It's good. And you just mentioned that growth, and then you also talked about that with your players. What are some ways you grow, Coach? Like, are you are you a reader? Are you a podcast guy? What are the ways that you're developing yourself?
Love to read. Love to read books. Love to watch film. I love to, and I would tell you this: podcasts are good too. Kevin, you got a great one. Like, this is awesome what you're doing. I'll listen to some podcasts when I get time. But I kind of do a little bit of every area. Like what can I learn about communication, leadership, basketball? Scheme wise. Again, I know it's maybe culture. There's all different areas of that I try to kind of continue to grow in. And again, there's so much good material out there now.
Yeah.
With the internet and with social media, I mean, it's incredible what's at your disposal.
What give us a favorite book or two, if you don't mind. We like to talk about books on here.
Yeah. Good to Great. Again, I know it's an older book. It's not new, but I think is extremely powerful. That's probably my favorite book of all time. Atomic Habits, right? James Clear, phenomenal. Those are, I love all John Gordon's books, man. Like Energy Bus, love. Training Camp. I mean, he has so many good ones. You really can't go wrong with any of his books. So those are just a few that come that are off the top of my head.
That's good. Yeah, those are all great. I love those. Atomic Habits might be my number one. And I don't want to drop a nugget without knowing for sure, but John will probably be on here in the future. So I look forward to that one with him. Well, hey, let's wrap up for you, Coach. I know you're busy, and once again, appreciate your time. I'm going to go 3-pointers here, rapid fire. Yeah. I want to take a little bit longer. Go right ahead. All right. Number one, if people could learn one thing from this talk and just hold on to it, what would you want that one thing to be?
I think serving others. I think that should be the point of, the central kind of theme around it. Like the more you serve others, the happier you'll be. And I think the further you'll go along in your career as well.
Love it. Number two, if you could have stepped into my shoes here today, been behind the mic and asked Coach Steele a question, what question would have you asked them that I did not ask today?
Ooh, that's a tough one, Kevin. I'm always curious to know why people do things. Like why? Why did they get into the business? And for me, it's very simple. I just wanted to help people. I love watching young men develop. I coached high school basketball, and I coached AAU, and I had my own development, skill development company. And just to watch people get better at an early age, it was like, man, I love this. I was like, man, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? It's just kind of help people. So that was my why.
It's great. It's great. Hey, and finally, good stuff is the name of this. Like, just give us some good stuff here in closing, or maybe anything you feel is appropriate at this time.
Yeah, for anybody out there to just work really, really hard. I think there's no secret sauce to success. It's about communicating, working your butt off, going that extra mile. I can't emphasize that enough. I think so many people say they will, but do they really, really, really want it? And you got to be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do.
For sure. All right, Coach, knocked him down there, man. 3 for 3. Way to go.
Thanks.
Hey, where can our listeners connect with you via social media, Xavier Basketball? Give us some information if you don't mind, please.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter, and I got to look up my Twitter name right now, Kevin. This is how bad I am. I'm active. It's at Coach Steele XU is my Twitter handle. Obviously at Xavier MBB is our Twitter handle, and our Instagram as well, which we're very, very active on social media. So I'm always accessible on those, and I'll try to respond as best as I possibly can. Great.
Well, hey, man, Coach, I really appreciate this. I'm hoping to get down there at some point. I'd love to see you guys in action, but I wish you best of luck this year. I love what you're doing. I love that, you are serving others. You're a great example with that. And, kudos to everything that's going on within that culture, more importantly, the things off the floor. So keep up the good work, and thanks so much for your time today. I really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, guys. Well, hey, ton of good stuff in here. As always, feel free to reach out to me, as you know by now, goodstuffkevin@gmail.com. Let me know what you think about Coach Steele. And if you get a chance, head on down there, watch him. It's a great basketball and a great environment. Thanks for spending time with us today. And until next time, good stuff.